Okay, guys, so I just wanted to go over a couple of questions that seem to throw a few people off. First one I'm going to talk about is question number 3. This question, let's see, 84% of you guys got this question correct. But the hint on this was that we have the same denominator. So when we have the same denominator, we're really just looking at the numerators and just picking the bigger number. So if you look here, I've made 2 fraction pictures, and you could do this. Draw out 2 pieces, cut one of them into 9, well, cut both of them into 9 pieces because the denominator is 9. Shade in 5 of them, shade in 7 of them, and you can see right here that 7/9 is larger than 5/9. So 5/9 is less than 7/9. And again, if you have the same denominator, you don't even have to look at that. You're really just looking at your numerators to help you make that decision because you're comparing apples to apples, okay? The other question that we had some confusion on was question number 4. And question number 4, the hint was we have the same numerator. Well, only 71% of you guys got this question correct. So what that means is we're going to draw 2 pictures exactly the same size. One of them we're going to cut into 10 pieces and shade in 4 of them. The other one we're cutting into 6 pieces and shading in 4 of them. If we have the same numerator, then we look at the denominators. The smaller denominator is going to be larger because look at this, we have larger pieces whenever we cut them into smaller amounts. The larger the denominator, the more pieces we have to have here. So we have smaller pieces. So if you have 4 smaller pieces versus 4 larger pieces when we only divide it into 6 pieces. So 4/10 is less than 4/6. So again, those hints are if you have the same denominator, you're just looking at the numerators and the larger number is your larger fraction. If you have the same numerators, you're looking for the smaller number because it has larger pieces. Okay, so that was one of our questions. Another question that seemed to have a lot of trouble with was question number 7. Question number 7 was a number line. Well, it wasn't a number line, but we would want to create a number line for it. I'm going to find it here on my board. 80% of you guys got this question correct, and then there was a variety of other answers. The question was, which one of these has the is smaller than a half? So what you should have done, I'm going to turn this on my side, hopefully it doesn't mess you up. What you should have done is draw yourself out this little number line. This is a good way of doing a comparison whenever you have a lot of different fractions and you want to kind of see where they fall. So draw out your number line and put your constants on there, your 0, your half, and your 1. And then you want to look at each one of these and place them where they would fall. Are they going to be 0? Are they going to be on the half? Are they going to be on the 1? Or would they fall between 0 and half? Or would they fall between half and 1? And how do we decide that? Well, really, you're going to look at these denominators and think about half of those numbers. So half of 6 is 3. Okay, so if that had a 3 on the top, it would equal a half, and we would put it there. But if the number on the top, if the numerator is smaller than 3, it's going to go 0 to half. If the number on the top is greater than 3, it would go between half and 1. So a 2 is smaller than 3, so it is going to fall between 0 and half. So 2/6 is going to go somewhere over there. 5/8, half of 8 is 4. If I look at my numerator, if this number was a 4, it would go on the half. If this number is less than 4, it would go between 0 and a half. And if it's greater than 4, it's going to go between half and 1. Well, it's greater than 4, so it's somewhere over here. Okay, now look at the 4. Half of it is 2. Now I'm looking at my numerator. Again, if that is 2, it's right at the half. If it's smaller than 2, it falls over here. If it's larger than 2, it falls over here, which it is. So 3/4 is going to be greater than half. And then we have 12. Half of 12 is 6. We look at our numerator. If it was 6, it would go right on the half. It's going to be bigger than 6, so that means it falls over here, 9/12. So when I use my number line, I'm able to see whether the fractions fall between 0.5 or half and 1. And in this case, it's 2/6. So 2/6 is the fraction that is less than half. I'm telling you, if you guys use these number lines, it's going to really help you out. Now, the next question we had a little bit of trouble with was question number 8. It's this ordering. Apparently, I did a really poor job of explaining that one. I know it was pretty quick. So, I'm glad we're going over this again. So, on question number 8, you are supposed to put these fractions in order from least to greatest. Again, on a separate sheet of paper, draw out that number line, put your constants on there. Okay, so we're going to look if any of them equal a 0. So that means their numerator would have to have a 0, and none of them do. Are any of them a half, which means the numerator is half of the bottom number. Ooh, yep, 2/4. So 2/4 is going to go right there. Okay, so we're done with that one. Do any of them equal a whole? That means the numerator and the denominator have to be the same. 5/5. Okay, now we're going to use that little trick that we just learned. We're going to look and see if they're greater or less than a half. So, half of 8 is 4. 6 is greater than half. So 6/8. 1/9. What's half of 9? Well, 4.5 is half of 9. I know that's a little tricky, but we'll look at our numerator. And our numerator is less than 4.5. So 1/9 comes over here. On 2/3, well, half of 3 is 1.5. And 2 is larger than 1.5. So it's going to go over here, 2/3. So right now we do have a little bit of a problem because I ended up with two numbers between half and 1, and I don't know if they're in the right order yet. I just can't assume they are. So then we've got to do our comparing. So I'm going to do 6/8. I'm going to compare that to 2/3. And how can I do that? I'm going to cross multiply. So 3 times 6 is 18. 8 times 2 is 16. Well, I can see 2/3 is smaller. So these are backwards then. And now they're in order. So my order is 1/9, 2/4, 2/3, 6/8, and 5/5. So, you know, if you didn't follow that, maybe go back and watch it again and see if you can pick up on maybe a part that you missed. It's a great thing about me not having to do another example. You can kind of watch that one again. Another question that we had some trouble on was the next ordering question. So, oh, Sadie's having a meltdown because we saw a fly. Okay, listen, I'm videoing right now, sweetie, so I'll come and get that in a minute, okay? Okay, so drawing out our number line, I'm going to see if any of them equal that. Well, 0/7 obviously equals 0. Okay. We have a fly, I think, in our house. 3/3 equals 1.
I'm scared.
It's okay. It's okay. I'll come in just a minute.
I can't
Okay,
go back in. I can't because it's scary.
Okay, hang out here with me then for a minute. Now, can you see if there are any of these that equal a half, which means the numerator is half of the denominator? Well, I do. 8 is half of 16, so 8/16. So far, we're able to knock out 3 of those real quick. So let's take a look at 4/5. What's half of 5? Half of 5 is 2.5. Well, 4 is definitely bigger than 2.5, so 4/5 is going to go over on that side. And then we have 2/6, and half of 6 is 3. 2 is smaller than 3. That means it belongs over here. And voila, They're in order perfectly. We don't have to do any comparison. So 0 sevenths, 2 sixths, 8 sixteenths, 4 fifths, and 3 thirds. Very good. All right, so hopefully that makes sense to you. Now, we've got one more to look at, and this was the one that pretty much we had quite a bit of people mess up on this one. It's okay, it's okay. Okay, so part A, I only had 46% of you get this correct. 33% of you chose 5 as our denominator, that our denominator should be 5. 20% of you chose 15 should be our denominator. And 47% chose the correct answer, which is 10. So let me find out why 10 is the correct answer. So I told you without cross multiplying, another way that we could solve these problems is by finding a common denominator. Now I realize this is more of a 5th grade skill. So this is a little bit more advanced, but I think it's good. It is on our study island and things like that, but it's good for us to understand this if you can understand equivalent fractions and multiples. So basically, we have to find a number that can be a multiple of both 5 and 10. So if I skip count by 5s, will I say the bigger number? And I do. So if I do, I don't have to change the denominator there. It can actually stay the same. All I'm doing is now going to change my 5 to a 10 so that I can compare them with like denominators. Well, how do I change it to a 10? What I'm going to do is I'm going to write down my 3 fifths, and I'm going to try to find an equivalent fraction that has a 10 for a denominator. And we know that if to get from 5 to 10, I'm going to multiply by 2. So I'm going to do the same thing on the top, which is 6.
I'm so scared.
It's all right. That fly's not going to hurt you.